자, 모두 자리해 주셔서 감사드립니다. 오늘 지금부터 AI 철학 연구센터 개소기념 심포지엄을 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 저는 카이스트 AI 철학 연구센터의 센터장 김동우입니다. 반갑습니다. 그럼 개회사를 시작으로 행사를 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 존경하는 카이스트 이사장님과 총장님, 그리고 국내외에서 귀한 발걸음을 해주신 석학 여러분, 그리고 이 자리에 발걸음을 해주신 카이스트 교수님들과 학생 여러분, 반갑습니다. 카이스트 철학 연구센터장 김동우입니다. 오늘 우리는 문명의 전환과 철학의 과제라는 주제 아래 AI와 로보틱스가 일상이 된 시대에 인간, 사회, 그리고 기술을 어떻게 다시 설계해야 하는가라는 근본적인 질문을 함께 성찰하기 위해 이 자리에 모였습니다. 인공지능과 로보틱스의 발전은 단순한 기술의 진보를 넘어서 자율성, 존엄, 그리고 삶의 의미와 같은 인간의 가장 근본적인 가치들과 정의, 평등, 노동과 같은 사회적 가치 전반을 다시 성찰하도록 우리를 이끌고 있습니다. 이러한 대전환의 시대에 철학은 기술의 속도를 늦추는 것이 아니라 기술이 나아가야 할 방향을 그리고 기준을 정해주는 나침반이어야 할 것입니다. 카이스트 AI 철학 연구센터는 바로 이러한 문제의식에서 출발했습니다. 과학기술과 철학의 긴밀한 협력을 통하여 인간 중심의 AI와 기술 문명을 설계하는
in an economic society in which AI, technology, and philosophy comes together, and how can science and humanities work together to show the value of philosophy and make a world where philosophy plays an important role. So today we would like to talk about the Humanism 4.0 and the multi-layeredness of humanity and the role of AI in the post-AI world and philosophy. I hope that today's discussions will not only take place here at KAIST, but also spread to the larger society. So I would like to thank all who are here today, and the panelists, and the speakers as well, and the participants of today's forum. And I would like to open today's forum, and I hope it becomes a turning point for society. Thank you. Next, we will like to hear from the KAIST president.
Good morning, everyone. I am President Kwang Hyung Lee. Today, we are going to celebrate KAIST, the opening of the KAIST AI Philosophy Research Center. And for that, we're holding this inaugural symposium of the KAIST AI Philosophy Research Center. And I would like to thank each and every one of you for joining us here today, and especially our board member, Lee Myung-ja, for the Board of Trustees, for coming all the way to KAIST early in the morning. This AI Philosophy Research Center will be encompassing the philosophy, engineering, and other science areas to touch upon the values, and it could be a hub center for that. Through Science and Technology Research Center, we are going to pioneer the humanities civilization. KAIST itself we are going to talk about the coexistence of our humanity as well as AI, so that we could, create the technologies for that, and we will pioneer our ways to create a society where we could, coexist together. Because this is KAIST, we can foresee such challenges, and so that's why I think we should be at the forefront of addressing such issues. So, as we are opening the KAIST AI Philosophy Research Center, I would like to thank the head of the Digital Humanities and Social Sciences Department, as well as the other participating members. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your congratulatory remarks. Following this, our center has been in collaboration with MIT. So from all the way from the United States, we have invited Agustin Rayo from MIT. Despite him not being here present physically, but he has sent his video remarks.
Hello, everyone. I'm Agustin Rayo. I'm the Dean of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences at MIT. And it is an incredible honor to be included in the Inaugural Symposium of KAIST's AI Philosophy Research Center. I'm very excited about the center because it's important for Korea, for the world, but also more selfishly because I hope it will continue the ongoing conversation between KAIST Center for Digital Humanities and Computational Social Sciences and MIT School of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences. Congratulations to you all, and especially to the center's new director, Dong-woo Kim. One of this symposium's aims is to articulate the key challenges facing humanity in the post-AI and post-robotics era. Let me tell you about one such challenge that is especially close to my heart. As you all know, AI and robotics are going to change everything. They're going to change society, and they're going to change the paths to financial stability. You know, what it took to build a future a generation ago may not work a generation from now. And universities need to adapt. Universities need to find ways of continuing to provide value for students so that coming to university means not just expanding one's mind, but also finding a path to financial stability. What do we need to do? Well, some things are clear. We certainly need to provide an ecosystem where incredible minds come together and catalyze their best work. We need to create nimble learners who know how to learn. And crucially, we need to produce students who are not just able to execute impeccably on the tasks they're assigned, but learners who have the judgment to know what tasks to execute on. We need students who appreciate the social and political and ethical and human components of the projects they're involved in. We need students with leadership and communication skills and critical thinking. And all of these are things that can only be achieved if there is a genuine collaboration with philosophy and the humanities more generally, and STEM. And I believe that what you are doing, what this center is doing, is a very important component of that. So again, congratulations to you all, and thank you so much for including me in this event.
Thank you, Professor Rayo, for your welcoming speech. And our schedule, we are going a bit ahead of schedule. So if you look at our schedule, we don't have a break, and we will continue to have lectures. So by the end, we may not have enough time. So although it is a bit early, we would like to go right on to our keynote speech. We would like to invite Professor Yasuo Taguchi for the keynote speech. Professor Yasuo Taguchi played a large role in helping the KAIST AI Philosophy Center open. He gave us a lot. He opened the Philosophy Research Center in Kyoto University, and he talked about the role that philosophy could play in different sectors of society. And as Professor Yasuo will present, he will talk about what is important in the era of AI. He will also give us his philosophical view. So I believe that he is the perfect speaker for today's keynote speech. So Professor Yasuo Taguchi, as I told you before, is the head of the Kyoto Philosophy Research Center, and he is the head of the Department of Philosophy at Kyoto University. So we would like to invite Professor Yasuo Taguchi to give his presentation on towards a multi-layered society of values.
Thank you. And good morning from Kyoto, Japan. And first of all, thank you for inviting me to give a talk this very important inauguration symposium. So it is my greatest honor and pleasure to talk to you, even this online setting. And I'd like to express my heartfelt congratulations to all of you and your new AI Philosophy Center and all of you who were involved in its establishment, including President Kang Lee. And I understand that this AI Philosophy Center at KAIST was established under the very similar or exactly same spirit and philosophy to those of KIP, where I serve as I introduced, co-chairperson. Therefore, today I'd like to speak about the philosophy and ideal that is behind KIP, Kyoto Institute of Philosophy's establishment by using that slide. Okay, please go to the next first slide. Thank you. So this is our historical observation about history. 20th century was no doubt century of economy, science, and technology. Economy, science, technology still very, very important. No doubt about that. But we are in the 21st century. Ideal value should go upside to the more surface. And we should ask again, what is values? And which value we should aiming for, or science, technology should aim for. Value should be the first front questions, and that should be the highlight focus of any institutions, universities, and other businesses, government. Many people should rethink what value is. So that's why we called this century is a century of values. Next slide, please. So what is values? Oh, value includes physical values, physical pleasures, spiritual pleasures, well-being, happiness, or many other things. But big question is, what is the values? Many answers in the philosophies. And here's my answer. Value should be understood always with relation to our somatic bodily actions. So value is what gives directions, vectors, to any single somatic actions. With one single values, each individual somatic actions can be, coherent, can be coordinated in a good way. And many people's somatic action can be united under a single banner of value that makes possible collective actions. So without value, no coherence of our single actions, no collective action at all. So value is crucially important. Next slide, please. So now that is a very common ground. Value differ from one individual person to another, from one individual society to another, one individual culture to another. So we should respect this value pluralities. I think it's very important. That should be our starting point. But that is not enough, I think. Even one single individual person, even one single individual organizations, even one single society or culture, there should be many values inside. And some of those values even contradict with each other. So they formed in a sort of a layer, and I call that multi-valued layers, multi-layeredness values. I think that is a reality, especially for the non-Western, cultures or society like Korean and Japanese ones. We are still deeply influenced by the East Asian tradition and also very deeply influenced by the Western values. That is our reality. So that should be not denied. That should be what we should embrace. That should be what we should face. Next slide, please. How to do that? How to be honest to this multi-layeredness of values and to better value societies. Here is our answers. Of course, very important to give some concrete solutions to particular problems in a society. That's still very important, but that's not enough, we think. We should go deeply inside into the core question, core layer, and asking very philosophical and even existential questions. What is the humans? What is the human relations? What is the ideal societies? What is the goodness? What is the values? And always asking such a fundamental philosophical question and go back to the superficial social issues. This kind of a cycle is essential. That's why humanities, including philosophy, should be in this cycle. Next slide, please. So this gives us a new image of humanities, a new image of philosophies. Always thinking deeply, asking the most basic philosophical questions, always with relation to very important hot social issues. Humanity should engage society in this kind of engagement, or combining very deep questioning and social issues. So we call that engaging humanities, engaging philosophies. So next slide, please. And here is my proposal on one of many multi-layered values. I call that we turn from I to we. This we turn is based on another turn from capability to incapability. Capability is very important, and that is a focus for Western philosophies many, many years. Aristotle, for example, he said that intellectual capability is very important. And it's quite natural and very just for intellectually more capable people to govern less capable. And he called the less capable people as natural slave. Kant said, no. He said, okay, every human beings are intellectually same, equally intellectual, so no natural slave. So that is against slavery. This idea is very, very important still. But afterwards, Nietzsche said, no, that's just sweet lie. There should be a difference, hierarchy, even among peoples, with respect to the intellectual capabilities. Still, today, some peoples called Nietzschean accepted this Nietzsche's idea, old Aristotelian hierarchy, and there should be sort of a difference in the intellectuality even among peoples. And they prefer oligarchy rather than democracy. This idea, Aristotle's Nietzsche's idea, still we can see the many aspects of a contemporary society. For example, the relation between human and non-human animals. Human is more intellectual, so it's quite natural for human to use other animals as sort of a slave. And this idea also we can find in the human AI, human robotics relations. It's very dangerous. Now AI is wiser than humans. So AI can be master and human slave. That is a sort of AI dystopia. And important intellectual superiority human have at the moment should be retained always. That is fundamentally designed AI. That design is intellectual capabilities. Human has now that. So don't let AI design itself deeply. Design power, design right should be within the human hands always. Otherwise, Aristotle hierarchy should upside down human AI relationship. That kind of idea model, human should be the slave and human should be a master, AI should be a slave, still very dominant in Europe, for example. Next slide, please. So, but I think maybe we can have a different view to the core of humanities. That's based on incapability rather than capabilities. So there are some fundamental incapability that are universal and no one can escape from that, however effort they made. For example, we cannot live eternally. That's very fundamental incapability. So here is another fundamental incapability in relation to the somatic actions. That is, I observe, even one single human, one single AI, whatever agent can perform its action, somatic action alone. For every single somatic action, we need help, support, affordance of many other agents, humans and non-human animals, plants, some natural things, and artifacts. Without their support, no single somatic action like riding a bicycle, very simple, apparently single action, cannot be performed. So, what is the subject of the single actions, riding bicycle? Rider, is very important, but that's not enough. What is here working of a system of all necessary indispensable agents that include me and many other agents. So let me call this system multi-agent system as a unit and subject of action. That is a doer. So this is a we turn. Turn from I to we as a we doer. This triggers many other we turn, for example, self. If self is a doer, self should be also shifted from self as I to self as we turn of self. So many kind of we turn of values should follow from that. So this is a we turn system, my own proposal of value to the society. Next slide, please. But not all we's are good we's. Just like not all I are good I's. There are good I and bad I, and there should be good we and bad we. Then what is a bad we that should be avoided? One typical example of bad we is an empty center-occupied we, I call that. Center of values, center of profit is occupied by one single person. That is a bad dictatorship. If center of values is occupied by one single social group, that is bad social inequality. If one center is occupied by one single species, human being, that is bad anthropocentrism. So that is the center occupied we, occupied by just some peoples, and many others are just served for that occupier's value. That is bad we. So good we is just opposite to that bad we. I call that empty-centered we. Centered of value or profit is always deliberately emptied. No one should occupy the center unilaterally. No one should, have a unilateral relation between itself, oneself, and other members of we. So that is good we, empty-centered we. Next slide, please. Then we can apply this good ways idea to the many, societies, many contexts. For example, human AI, human robot relationship. European model of that relation, master-slave model, is one of the typical bad we. That is the center-occupied we, whose center is occupied by only human beings, and any other agent, animals, and AI robot should be taken as a slave, who should serve center-occupiers, humans' interest profit unilaterally. That is the bad we. That is we should avoid. So we turn, my value system offers its alternative. I call that fellowship model, adventurer model, that treat any member of we, humans and animals and AI robots, as equal fellows or co-adventure who participate to somatic action, that is the risk-taking activities. So that should be the new model, and that model should be proposed from, I think, East Asian society like Japan and Korea. Next, final slide, please. So let me say again, KIP's ideal banner is multi-layered society of values. So to realize that, collaboration among the many different sectors in the society is essential. And collaboration with technology, science, and philosophy, humanities are very essential. So that is the idea of KIP, and that is the idea, I believe, of the new center as well. So we are on the same boat from the outset. So let me close my presentation that is from the Future Potential Sister Organization in Kyoto. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Teguchi, for your speech. Based on this Asian ideas, humans, AV actions are actually, coupled with other values, and he has somehow linked it with the multi-layered values, and I found it very impressive. So, if there's any question from the floor, then I can, get one question from the floor. So there's one question that I would like to ask. If you look at the slide, if you look at the fifth slide, there's this one impressive part where it says that, philosophy is the study of analysis. That's the common thought. But however, if it asks the fundamental the values, and you say that all these institutions need to cooperate to design. So what do you think, which philosophy plays the active role? Can you provide your insight for that?
Okay. And many answers can be possible. And contemporary philosophies, and some of them conducted in the universities, I call that normal philosophy, using Thomas Kuhn's term, normal science. Normal science, according to the Kuhn, that's the puzzle solving, assuming very big assumptions. Based on that, just heading for the concrete, tractable questions through the established methodologies. I think that's very important, no doubt. But that is too small for these missions. We need that kind of a normal science, normal philosophy to make the philosophy's quality better. But beyond that, we should ask again big questions. We should make questions, big assumptions that many normal philosophers just taken for granted. So this kind of a new opening of big questions, fundamental questions such as what is a human beings? What is values? This kind of philosophy, I call that engaging philosophy, asking very big questions, and through that, engaging society by proposing very good answers, plural, to good, very fundamental questions. And to do that, we need some sort of a cultural background, or many backgrounds in the many corners of the world. Western values, European values, American values, still very, very important, no doubt about that. And we incorporate that values in our societies, Korea, Japan. But we need, on the top of that, many different cultural value system, value intuitions, other philosophies. And in your case, East Asian, Korean philosophy, that should be the very potential, rich philosophical resources to explore, to ask again big questions and propose good answers, plural, to the society.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so we can ask one more question from the floor.
학장님 잘 들었습니다.
Thank you
감사합니다.
for
아주
your
멋진 강의였고요.
presentation. I really loved it.
위라는 거하고
You talked about
value라는
we
것이
and
만나서
value,
이제
and those are, like, should be coupled, and that's the way forward.
인간 본성의
But if you look at the
법칙에
human
따라서
nature, the principle of human
위가
nature,
추구하는
what
value하고
we is promoting and what individual people are promoting are very different, because in the modern society, because people have this like motivation for individual like values, so it could contradict with we's values. Then how can we resolve that?
Okay, thank you. Very good questions. So our modern societies and influenced by the Western cultures, Western ideology, focused I, individual. That's true, and I don't deny that. So what I'm proposing, I is important, but we is also very important. Without we, no I. And without I, no we. We should become just simply you or they. So I is again essential for we. So I doesn't disappear even after we turn. Both are very important. This kind of mutual importance, mutual necessity should be part of elementary educations. Elementary education is the basis for the future societies. And elementary educations in Japan, for example, emphasis is put on the I, mainly in a modern society. That's still very important, but I think emphasis on the we is equally important. So maybe we can change ideology, ideas, basic idea of elementary schooling from I alone to I and we. I has a fundamental incapability that might be bad news, but that can be good news. That's why we are always living as a member of we, supported by other members of we and we itself. To face this kind of reality in a school, I think that's very basic, good, foreground for the future societies.
네, 대구치 교수님 강연 그리고 질의응답
Professor Teguchi, thank you for your presentation as well as your answers for those questions that
Thank you.
came out from the floor.
그 철학 행사들은
So all these like philosophical like events are actually consisted of all these like discussions. And so starting from the first presentation, we had our presenter as well as the people, our participants to discuss, and I find it very meaningful. Professor Teguchi has emphasized the importance of we, and great way to contribute to our society is to talk about the fundamental ideas and redefine those concepts. And next, we believe that it is somehow closely connected to our KAIST President Kwang Hyung Lee's next presentation, which is on Humanism 2.10. Thank you. I only have 10 minutes. So I will try to conclude my presentation within 10 minutes. So before I start, I would like to talk about how KAIST decided to create this KAIST AI Philosophy Research Center. So I would like to go back to the year of 2019 and 2020. I was the Vice President for the Office of Academic Affairs, and I thought that it would be great if we could have this, KAIST AI Philosophy Research Center. So every Tuesday, we talked about how we could, remodel our digital humanities and social sciences, because I thought that we would lose our direction without humanities. And as I became the president in the year of 2021 for KAIST, what I did first was that I have made the graduate program for the Digital Humanities and Computational Sciences Department. And after that, we started, our partnership with MIT Humanities Department, and I thought that the direction way forward is the same with MIT. And last year in the summer, we had Kim Myung-hee, who is the director of the center, and had this robotics strategic forum. And during that forum, we have Professor Kim Jung. He is the robotics engineer. And what he said during that time was that when we design our robots, we cannot make the robots who are bad, and we thought that we need to have the robots who are good and who can be friendly to humans. And that's the idea that came up from this pure robotics engineering, and I thought that it was very important. And during that time, I heard that Kyoto University made this philosophy center, and that what gave me courage, and I thought that we could also make this philosophy center. So today I'm going to talk about Humanism 2.0. It's going to be short. I was actually given 20 minutes, but after me, I have Professor Park Sung-bi, who is going to present, and I thought I could give him 10 minutes of my time, because Professor Park Sung-bi, when we are going to make this AI college at KAIST, he is going to teach something related to the robotics and the philosophy for that. As you all know, that we're living in the humanistic society, and I believe that we're living in the 1.10 version 1.0 humanistic society, and I believe that with AI we will moving towards this humanism 2.0 society. Like in humanism 1.0, when we talk about this society, we talk about the Western philosophy, and if I sum it up, we know that there's Socrates and Platon. Before they came, there was this natural nature philosophy, and then after that, Socrates came out and then talked about human-centered ideals, and through such ideas in thinking, the Greek citizens, the male adults who were the minority, and they said that we need to respect each other and we need to recognize each other. So it was the society that was made during that time, and it can be depicted through this picture. And then after that, Greece, Roman society, and then to the medieval time, it was centered around God. And as you know that as we move towards Humanism 1.1, there's this Renaissance movement, and they talked about in the past, we need to rethink about this human-centered society. And during that time, the protagonists were male, but the noble people at the same time. And that was the Renaissance era. At the time, there were the slaves for the agricultural society, and the female, they did not have any say, and they were not even considered as humans. So they were the people who had the similar personal traits as what males had. And as we move towards Humanism 1.2, that's when there was this French Revolution. So it has shifted from the king and noble-centered society. It moved towards the bourgeois people. And this bourgeois class has actually, they revolted. And at the time, the protagonists were the people who were male, noble, and bourgeois at the same time. So these were the people who led the society back then. And I would like to call it as Humanism 1.2. And as we entered Humanism 1.3, there was this Industrial Revolution, and there was abolishment of slavery in Europe as well as in the United States, and the protagonists were the proletarians. sorry, so the ordinary citizens.
새로운 그러니까 초기에 그리스 시대의 그 남성
So in the Greek world, the people who were rich were and the male were the like protagonists, but then we were considered as the human. The scope, human. So the scope of human, it expanded through all these years. And with the Industrial Revolution, as you know, that this was this like proletarian revolution, and they started receiving similar. They were treated similarly with the other classes who were considered as humans. And the order that was established at the time is the order that is something that we have today. So all the working class people are equal, and I believe that this is the society that we're living in today. And as you know, that in such society there were this like new. Sorry, before I move on, there was this like female women's liberation movement. And the movement became huge in the 20th century, and then the women were also given the voting rights in the 20th century. So women also became the protagonists of the societies, along with male, bourgeois, ordinary people, and the workers. If you look at all these like transformations, there was but if you look at the women's liberation movement, it was no like bloodshedding movement. But if you look at the other like movements, like proletarian revolution and French Revolution, it was like bloodshedding revolution. So in Humanism 1.0, there was no bloodshedding events. So what I see the difference is that the society is accepting all these like changes. Then there's no like bloodshedding like events. But if such peaceful like movements are being rejected, then it caused bloodshedding events and created new orders. And so the next new society arrives. So this like new existence life being came into our society. And if we reject that new being, then it could not be peaceful. But if we accept it, then we can create this like peaceful society. And I believe that as AI emerged, we have entered into the new era. And so these are some of the challenges that we are going to face in the 21st century with the emergence of AI. And so we're going to talk about, so we may be challenged with our humans' identity, and there will be shifts in the labor market, psychological disruption, income gap, and there will be some changes with the human roles. And this is not, the far away from us. It's the near future within the next 20 or 30 years. And this like AI robots, are they going to have this like creativity? Are they going to have like sensory perceptions? And will they be having this like self-awareness? Because our humanism, and it could somehow like dismantle our basic like humanism ideals. So the conclusion that we can come down to is that we should coexist with them, because if we look back historically, only like coexistence could turn our society into a peaceful one. So as we transform from Humanism 1.2 to 2.0 with the emergence of AI, as you can see, AI will be participating in our society and become the next protagonist and part of our society's member. So if we accept them, then we can create this peaceful society. And as you can see in this picture, the title of this picture is this AI School of Athens. If you look in the middle, when Raphael drew this picture, it has replaced robot where Platon stood, and this robot is talking with Aristoteles to talk about the ideologies.
그래서 우리 결론은
So our conclusion can come down to
평화롭게 새로운 질서를
creating this new order peacefully, and for us to accept it, we need to understand our humanities with new life being. And if we can do that, and we also need to maintain this humanistic ideologies, and if we can do that, then we can accomplish this peaceful society. So what we need to do is that we need to dominate these tools. We need to have that power. So then we can establish this like peaceful society. If not, if we get dominated by these tools, then that's when these tools are dominating our ideas, and it is similar to like revolutions that happened in the past. So I believe that if we talk about the 21st century humanism 2.0, and when we study this Humanism 2.0, we need to study humanities a lot, and we also need to develop this power or the technologies that can dominate all these tools. And if I have another time, I'd like to talk about it. And I also believe that, we need to have this international body, such as UN, to manage this new tools. And if we can do that, then I think we can peacefully have the transition to the Humanism 2.0. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much to the President. And he has played an important role in opening the KAIST AI Philosophy Research Center, and we were able to open thanks to him. And as he mentioned, Professor Kim Jung said we need to make robots that are respectable. And based on that, I and the President and the many professors in the School of Digital Humanities and Sciences had many discussions, and that led to the creation of the AI Philosophy Research Center. I'd like to thank the President once again. Are there any questions from the floor? I think we'll be able to take one or two questions.
President Lee, thank you for your interesting remarks. While listening to your presentation, I thought, such novel idea, can we actually accept that? Because peace can crumble very quickly and easily. So such grand idea, in order to share that grand idea, we need a global society where we can actually implement and accept that. When we have some powerful tool, we cannot help but have the temptation to use that in the wrong direction. So if you can give your idea on that, please. Well, that's very fundamental question. Looking back in our history, vested interests do not give their own interest easily. That's why we had such revolutions in the past. That being said, we have experience of labor movement and the renaissances. So now what we do actually determines the future. So I'm very hopeful and optimistic. So looking back in history, we know that it is difficult for vested interests to give up their rights. But the relationship between AI and robots should be backed up by control. And I think it is controllable. Can we perfectly control them? No. The society that we live in, there are many problems like drugs, viruses, alcohol, and car accidents. Such side effects do happen, but that's something that we can live up to.
수준의 리스크로 우리가
The risk should be within our control. So and within that kind of society, we should develop further on. And I think international cooperation can also happen within that kind of framework. So, for instance, some countries do invade others, but still, we're moving forward. So we should be hopeful and optimistic. There's one more question. Good morning. Thank you for your presentation. While listening to your presentation, the main pictures depict philosopher and robot engaging in dialogues, and also you've also depicted ideas on human philosopher talking to robots. And in some of the slides, you've talked about should we actually control robots? Should we look at robot as a philosophical partner or as a tool? What do you think about that?
네, 감사합니다. 아주 훌륭한 질문.
Well, that's a very good question.
우리 도서관에 교양분관에 입구에 있는
When you go to the library, there's a big picture. Do have a look.
우리가 인간이 이 AI는 결국 도구인데
AI is tool, but we should not look at AI just as tool because we cannot just control that as tool. We should be able to,
우리보다 그럴
because they're very smart.
그럴 바에는 미리 우리가 잘 수용해서
Taking that into consideration, we should consider them as partners and work together. That's the peaceful way forward. Because if we suppress them, oppress them, there is going to be a problem.
Thank you very much, President. Thank you very much, President Lee, for your presentation and for your insights. Let's give him another round of applause. So we started the School for Digital Humanities about 3-4 years ago, and recently KAIST also made the School of AI. And in that process, we talked about philosophy, policies, law, and many social scientists and humanities scientists worked together to build the College of AI. And the process of building the College of AI, there are people who made a big contribution. Professor Park Sung-pil, he is the head of the KAIST Graduate School for Munso Future Strategy. And he talked about how philosophy, and law plays an important role and how it can be researched and taught at KAIST as a future strategy. So I would like to call the Dean of the Munso Graduate School of Future Strategy to the floor, to the stage. Hello everyone, I am Professor Park Sung-pil, and the President gave me a very special 10 minutes, so I am able to be here today. I majored in law and I am working at KAIST, which is a global institution for science and technology, and I am glad to be here to this symposium where we have many globally renowned philosophers. And so I was a bit nervous when I thought, when I was going to give this speech in front of philosophers, so I wanted to become a philosopher myself, so I made many notes, as you can see here, but my presentation became a bit complex, so I thought maybe in the era of AI, I need to do things a bit differently. So today I would like to talk about post-AI robotics era and KAIST strategy. So what I want to talk about is not just about technology. So in this era where technology is highly developed, and we want to discuss the relationship of philosophy, ethics, and law in this age of AI. So how will we understand these, and what kind of role can KAIST play in this post-AI robotics era? So, if you just take a simple look, you may believe that there is no relationship between philosophy and AI, but I want to share with you a case. So in 2023, there was a lawsuit between the Andy Warhol Foundation and photographer Goldsmith. So in 1981, the photographer Goldsmith took black and white photos of the rock star Prince. So you can see on the top right is the original photo. Andy Warhol made silk skin. He used the silk skin printing process to make many works of art. So you can see on the bottom the works of art created by Andy Warhol. The issue was that the Andy Warhol Foundation used, you can see the orange image on the right second row. They used this commercially. They provided a commercial license for a magazine to use this as a cover. And there was a lawsuit between whether this was a copyright infringement or if it is a law of free use art. And what was interesting is there was conflict between the Supreme Court judges because some judges focused on the copyrights issue, but on the other hand, there were judges who, especially Kagan, the Judge Kagan, Supreme Court judge, said that if you look at the way that Warhol's works are made, they usually transform existing pieces of art into new ways. So he said that there is a value, a very important value in Andy Warhol's work. So he thought that the original shows the vulnerable side of Prince. Do you think that he looks vulnerable in this photo? But Andy Warhol used the silkscreen method to make this Prince, this star, and he used the silkscreen technology to show Prince as the huge celebrity that he was. And what's interesting is both the opposition and the agreeing sides, they both had a legal review of the same work of art, but they reached very different conclusions. Why do you think that is? Why do you think they had such differing conclusions? Because I believe that this is because of the differences in philosophy. There's a difference in the philosophy of what is creativity, what is the silkscreen method. Do we need to protect the methods of creating art? And do copyright laws, what do copyright laws want to protect? So because the judges had different philosophical views that lead to different outcomes and different conclusions. So for us, as we ponder about the post-AI era, I believe this is a good starting point because we want to, even within the same laws, you can see that people interpret it very differently based on their philosophy. Is this a copyright infringement or not? Is this legal or not, or illegal? So I believe that this is a very important case study of when we are looking into the changing world of AI and robots. So there is an enormous transformation of technology, and I believe that philosophy can provide the basis for a society, and we throw these philosophical questions and we want to answer them. So what does it mean to be a human? What is human dignity? If there is a loss, then who will be in charge of that? Are there any values that we cannot, or any decision-making processes that we cannot leave to AI? So these questions are no longer vague questions. You can see algorithms, models, infrastructure, and robots that use AI. So, for example, if there's an AI that can perform surgery better, that they can plan and proceed with surgeries better with more precision than humans. Recently, Elon Musk said that AI robots will begin to exist since of 2030. So AI can decrease flaws or mistakes and help save more lives is the argument. But in philosophically and from the part of law, if an autonomous system performs and decides to give a surgery, then who is responsible for the outcome of that surgery? Is it the person who made the software? Is it the hospital? Or is it the physician who oversaw the surgery? Then does the responsibility go to the patient who agreed to the surgery? And if the decision maker is not human, then what does the consent of the patient even mean? So we can't just talk about accuracy. We need to, even if a surgery is 100% successful, we need to still think about the human dignity and autonomy and trust. And we cannot answer this question simply with better engineering. So we need the philosophical decision-making, and we need philosophy to create this standard for these decisions. For example, there are robots that can help the elderly, or there are humanoid robots that are placed in public environments. Then, in terms of technology, these robots, the technology part will think about how well these robots can play out their roles. But from the viewpoint of philosophy, then what kind of interactions will protect the dignity of humans, and how can these robots intervene with human values and human life? So we want to run simulations of how these robots can be companions or friends to humans. But the risk is that humans tend to anthropomorphize robots, and they could overtrust or depend emotionally on the robots. So the true difficulty is, I believe, is in human vulnerability. So this is something that we cannot simply change by advancing technology. We need governance to address human vulnerability. And we often use the term social norms and social contract. So the social contract, we look at how the government's authority is played out in society and what is acceptable. So that is the social contract. But in the examples that I gave you before, there were things that were given to human professionals, for example, to make decisions about human life. But now that decision, if we are to give that to an AI system, we want to, and in that way, the AI is really giving a challenge to the social contract. So how can we accept certain decisions and certain changes? So this is not a technological decision, it is a philosophical decision. It could be political or legal philosophy, but nonetheless, it is a philosophical decision. Ethics is about social norms. It tells us what to do or what not to do. Ethics is a law, it can be enforced, but ethics cannot be enforced. And ethics that can be executable. So we cannot simply let AI make the decisions, because this has to do with human dignity, human autonomy, and equality. So ethics gives the direction for philosophy, and law makes sure that these ethics are enforced. And then we have the constitutional law to uphold the social contract that protects human autonomy, values, and equality. So how can KAIST respond to these changes? So KAIST works and nurtures top scientists and engineers, but AI cannot just see it from the technological viewpoint. As President Lee said before, that is true. And so KAIST students, we want to think about what will come after this era of AI and robotics. So the philosophical foundation, we want to see how it creates the ethical norms, and how do these ethical norms turn into law. And then how can these laws control or regulate even the strongest technology? So we want to decide, so how can we decide how and what technology will be regulated? So we need to learn the philosophical aspects. So today, this year, the College of AI has been newly inaugurated at KAIST, and I will teach a course. I've opened a course called Law, Ethics, and Philosophy in the Age of AI. And the original title was a bit different.
그 커리큘럼들을 다 이렇게 검토를 했는데
And I checked the curriculum of many similar courses, and I saw that many other universities also provided similar courses. And President AI talked about emphasize the importance of AI philosophy. So I added law and ethics. And so this has become the first of its kind. And Professor Kim Dong-nam, I think, is also here. So and we have co-designed this course, and we'll co-teach the course. And the role of this course is so KAIST students or lawyers. It's not about making KAIST students into lawyers or philosophers. It is to teach them how to basically understand philosophy and to understand the philosophical basis and ethical relations and understand the outcomes of law. That is the purpose of this course. AI is developing at a pace that humans have never experienced. But then we are seeing that the policies are not following the pace of technology. So technology is developing at an unprecedented pace, and humans are trying to create a society that fits that. And the OECD come up with a term called anticipatory governance. So when we want, especially we need a governance that can lead and help the new generation. And there are many questions in this new age. So how can we find the questions in this new age? We need a philosophical thinking. So in the post-AI world, that is why we need anticipatory governance. We need to be able to anticipate what will happen. And so I think this is something that KAIST wants to focus on and something that we all want to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. He had talked about, in the perspective, how to view philosophy. In the interest of time, I would like to invite a few questions very quickly. Thank you for your presentation. We're living in the era of AI and robotics, and going forward, we're going to ride this big wave. But why did you set your presentation topic as the post-AI and robotics era? How can we coexist with AI and humanoid robots in a way that we do not lose our humanity? How can we coexist with them? I want to know why you set your topic as post-AI and robotics era. Thank you. That's the very question that I want to find answers to. My understanding is that, as you've just mentioned, the technology of AI and robotics will advance further. And the era where we coexist is what I call the post-AI era. Is that correct? Well, the purpose of today's symposium is to depict an era where such things that you just mentioned is our daily lives. That's the post-AI era, and how can we merge philosophy into that kind of era? Well, I'd like to invite President Lee for that. We're frivolously engaging in research activities on AI. I call post-AI era as an era where AI becomes daily lives. In that era, people are going to pursue different things. When AI becomes part of our daily lives, how can we satisfy humans' needs in that kind of era? That's the questions that we want to delve into today. Thank you for that. Well, I think that's something that everyone wants to know about. So that's why I spared some time for President Lee's remarks. So with that,
시간이 짧아져서 5분간
I would like to take a 5-minute break and then come back for the next session. Thank you.
혹시 여기
And
내빈분들께서는 앞으로
as for our distinguished guests and our speakers,
해주시면 감사하겠습니다.
can we take some time for the photo?
행사의 시작을 위해서 내빈 분들께서는 자리에 앉아주시면 감사하겠습니다.
I'd like to ask all our participants and distinguished guests to take their seats.
이 행사가 굉장히 숨가쁘게 진행이 되고 있는데요.
We're running very tight on schedule,
이번 발표는
and this presentation
발표 순서상으로는 첫 번째, 대구치 교수님이 계시니까 두 번째 철학자 교수님을 모셨습니다.
is the second.
연세대학교 언더우드 국제대학의 철학 석좌 교수로
He's the
계신
distinguished professor of philosophy at Underwood International College, Yonsei University. Nikolai Zhang Li, Linton Pedersen. I've been working with him on AI philosophy and responsibility for quite a while. We've been collaborating, engaging in dialogues. He has vast international networks, and he has many experience in this field. So he has been one of the best partners to me. I would like to invite him with a big round of applause.
Hello. Okay. Thank you, first of all, for the invitation, and congratulations to KAIST for the inauguration of this wonderful center. As a philosopher, obviously I'm very excited about having a philosophy center that's AI focused. When I first got here, I got surprised to see Agustin Rayo suddenly on the screen. He was my professor when I did my master's at St Andrews in Scotland, but I guess it was a happy moment to see him on the screen. Now, the title I gave first when I was asked to speak here was Humanity in the Age of Embodied Artificial General Intelligence. But then, and this happens often to me as a philosopher, I got stuck just on this idea of embodied artificial general intelligence. So that's what I'll talk about, and also whether we can have artificial, sort of real general intelligence. Where do I change the slide? Oh, here, okay. Okay, so first let me talk a bit about what I'll call disembodied artificial intelligence. So a lot of people are quite familiar with this interface. It's the interface you see when you use ChatGPT, right? And a lot of people, I think, since November 2022 have spent a lot of time looking at this and sort of putting prompts into this interface. If you check out AlphaFold, you'll look at something like this, right? This kind of interface. And the common denominator for these two kinds of AI, right, is that it's a kind of digital AI, right? It lives sort of on computer circuits, and it's disembodied in the sense that, of course, it runs on hardware and some, it has a physical manifestation or realization of sorts, but it's not really going anywhere, right? In some relevant sense, it's stationary, right? So if you think about the kind of tasks that can be executed, you may want to add something on to this kind of AI. But now let me talk a bit about artificial general intelligence. So a kind of AI that matches or outperforms humans on any task. Now, this kind of AI is one of the holy grails of research and development in AI. You'll often hear, founders, CEOs, and presidents of AI companies or tech companies talk excitedly about how AGI is within reach. We'll get it soon. We'll get there soon, right? You hear a lot of that kind of talk. Now, the sort of standard characterization of AGI is anthropocentric in the sense that it explicitly mentions humans, right? It's part of the standard for AGI as it's widely discussed, right? So it's about artificial intelligence and how it compares to humans. Also, often a sort of common kind of currency you get in the AGI debate is that it's actually not what I would call proper or real AGI. It's not any task whatsoever. Most people focus on cognitive tasks or intellectual tasks. You see a lot of characterizations of AGI that actually explicitly has that restriction, right? So you have a kind of type restricted AGI. That's actually what most people talk about. Now, also, often when people characterize AGI, there's a kind of modality involved. It's not necessarily that you have AGI if and only if you have an AI system that actually outperforms for any given task, or maybe even for sort of with the type restriction, right, humans. It's more that it has a capability, right? It's in a position to outperform, right? It's not necessarily that it actually does it. Now, with the sort of emergence of LLMs, we have seen these kind of foundation models that have been trained on sort of vast amounts of data, right? In the case of LLMs, sort of a lot of text, right? And instead of being task specific, you get these models that have a lot of data and that are sort of quite general in some sense. So for LLMs, what you have is what you might call a linguistic general purpose model, right? And it's a kind of artificial type restricted general intelligence, right? Because there are certain kinds of tasks where LLMs can do these kinds of tasks quite well. So what is that kind of task? Well, it's language-mediated tasks, right? And that will cover quite a lot of tasks simply because if you look at least the kind of tasks that humans do, a lot of them are mediated through language, right? And that's why LLMs, they have been so widely deployed, right, across so many sectors and across so many types of tasks. Now, here's one observation. Type-restricted AGI, right, which, as noted, is the way that many people talk about AGI, that's compatible with this embodied AI. AI that's in some relevant sense just digital and doesn't really go anywhere, right? And here's a second observation. This embodied AI falls short of genuine or proper or real AGI, right? And it's simply because there are some kinds of tasks where you can't really be stationary. You can't really stay put in a single spot, right, to execute those tasks. If you think about your own life, right, there are many things that you can do with LLMs, but there are also a lot of things that you can't, right? It's not like if you want to unlock the door that the LLM can do that for you. You have to get up and do it yourself, right? Now, so again, this is just to give you some of these examples. AI like ChatGPT can tell you how to make basil pesto and how to unclog your kitchen drain and how to build a tree house and how to make certain kinds of cocktails. That's sometimes I use it a lot for, but sadly, it's not going to actually make you basil pesto. It's not going to actually unclog your kitchen sink, and it's not actually going to build your tree house. And sadly for me, it doesn't actually also make the cocktails that it tells me how to make, right? So there are some restrictions, right, on this kind of disembodied, purely digital AI that will make it the case that it will always fall short of proper, I think, or real AGI. So that's why you might think that if you want to get to proper AGI, you have to have a kind of embodied artificial intelligence. It has to have a body. It has to be able to move around. And this kind of AI is something that I think has gotten a lot of press recently, right? Because there's been a sort of annual convention, right, for robotics, where you see sort of robots and AI sort of merging, right? If you look at something for like Boston Dynamics, you know, they make robots for the real world, right? So they have mobility and dexterity and intelligence. So it's not that you have these simple robots that just in a sort of that execute quite trivial tasks. There's some intelligence under the hood, which, you know, combined with mobility, make these robots quite versatile. So you see a move from sort of task-specific robots that is stationary or mobile in a highly structured environment and a very narrow range of conditions, right? So that's the kind of robots that for a long time you got, right? So for example, if you have a warehouse, it's a highly structured environment in the sense that they're sort of, things are very neat and organized, right? They're sort of, that space is organized in a way so that simple robots or machines can move around and navigate the environment, right? And also, there's a very narrow range of conditions, right? Unlike the sort of the real world, it's not super messy where all kinds of things can happen and, you know, that you might not predict, right? But anyway, so you see a move from these kinds of robots to more general purpose robots that have greater mobility that are supposed to navigate less structured environments or, you know, be out in the wild, the real world, right? And in a wider range of conditions, right? Now, as soon as you let something out in the real world, you know, the system is much more prone to encounter a wider range of conditions, right? And there'll be issues there with how you get systems to generalize, because performance of systems typically vary greatly across conditions, right? And that's one of the sort of things that people spend a lot of time on in AI to get systems to generalize in the right kind of way. Now, the last part of the talk is focused on a question whether we can get to sort of real AGI. You know, when you have embodied AI, can you use it to get to real AGI? Now, Boston Dynamics, they have these sort of humanoid robots. You know, they look a bit like humans. They move around, right? They have mobility, and they collaborate with the Toyota Research Institute, and they've been looking into these foundation models for embodied AI or robots to get to general purpose embodied AI. And they call these kinds of models that are in you know, in their robots large behavior models, or LBMs. So you get a kind of transformer architecture, including a kind of vision transformer, right, to deal with images, and you get training or pre-training on a variety of tasks. And the idea with these LBMs is like LLMs, that you have, relatively speaking, a lot of training data, and then you can use that training data to, instead of having task-specific or very narrow application AIs, you can have something more general purpose. And now, so So they have a lot of kind of physical tasks, right, that you might try to execute if you're at home or if you if you want to ride your bike. I just have a sort of a small sample of the tasks that they tested. They have a much bigger sample in a paper that accompanies the material that I talk about now. So for example, it can cut apples. It can put the rotor on a bike, right? And the performance is quite good after it's been fine-tuned, like these LBMs, right? Compared to task-specific models, right? So you see it there, sort of in the reddish color, right? So there's a significant in terms of performance improvement for the LBM-based robot. Now, so the question then is whether if you have sort of embodied AI, it could be an LLM combined with an LBM that includes a vision transformer. Can you get to real artificial general intelligence? So to discuss this, there's this paper by François Chollet that's called On the Measure of Intelligence from 2019. I don't know if you've seen it. It lives on archive. So Chollet, he used to work for Google, and he has this it's a pretty long paper, maybe 60 pages or so, where he proposes a new measure of intelligence. As you all know, there are lots and lots of benchmarks out there that are typically task-specific, right? But he wants to kind of reconceptualize or reconceive how you think of intelligence so that instead of having measures that are task-specific, it's actually about how efficiently you learn new skills, right? And how efficiently you learn to address or solve new problems or tasks, right? So one thing to note about this characterization of intelligence is that it's non-anthropocentric, right? There's no explicit mentioning of humans in it. And it's not a task-specific measure, right? So in some sense, it goes beyond task-specific generalization. A lot of AI researchers, right, they're extremely obsessed with generalization, but it's typically within a specific task, for a specific task. So you'll have a lot of people that develop, models, and then they're very concerned with how the model generalizes beyond the data it's seen before, right? And so there's a big industry of basically like trying to test robustness of models, right, by putting it in new conditions, by giving it new data, and it's this kind of weakness, or there's room for improvement, right, if you fail to generalize in the right kind of way. But notice that Chollet's definition of intelligence has another kind of generalization, right? It's not within tasks, it's across tasks to new tasks, right? And I think the connection between Chollet's definition of intelligence and AGI, right, is that if you have a system that does really well on his measure, it's a good candidate for real AGI, right? And now for AGI, for real AGI, you need some kind of embodiment because there are some tasks that will have a physical aspect to it. It's not purely cognitive or intellectual. But there are some limitations of a lot of models that you have these days, namely that after you deploy them, the parameters are fixed, including the weights, right? But if you're in the wild, having fixed parameters is going to maybe not put you in a position so that you're sort of very versatile or adaptive when it comes to new tasks, right? So to get to real AGI, sort of without type restriction, you need something that's a bit more fluid, right? And now finally, I think I'm basically out of time, but now finally, a bit about what I originally wanted to talk about. What is the place of humanity in a world with embodied AGI, real AGI? That's a really tough question, I think. And I think a lot of things that people have already been concerned about with non-AGI, those kinds of questions will just become a lot more pressing with AGI, right? Now, but as a philosopher, you know, the kind of question that I'm kind of preoccupied with, or I gravitate towards naturally, is how we should understand and relate to embodied AGI. So I think there's some research on these questions that will be a kind of social psychology, or sort of in that direction, and it will be about how we perceive, how we react to, and how we interact with embodied AI. And there'll also be some research that's philosophical in the sense that it will have to do with understanding and concepts. So when you think about how you navigate the world and how you're situated in the world, that is mediated through concepts. And that's where, you know, philosophers spend a lot of time working on concepts, right? And thinking about how best to characterize them, how to apply them, whether we should stretch their boundaries of application, and so on and so forth. Now, in this box over here, I've put some concepts that, you know, clearly we apply to humans, right? So vision, reasoning, understanding, creativity, beliefs, desires, autonomy, agency, and well-being. These concepts, as you all know, are also, at least for some of them, are concepts that have been, you know, people have started applying to AI systems, right? So they see, or there's, you know, they have vision, they reason. Some people think they also understand, they can have beliefs, they have desires, and so on, right? Now, there's also a camp that will sort of push back against this kind of usage of language and concepts. And they're what you might call, they believe in something like human exceptionalism, that humans are quite unique, and you can apply all these concepts when you talk about humans, but not when you talk about AI systems. And then there's the other camp, right, that thinks that you should start applying these concepts and also understand AI systems through them. And I talk about this because I think this question, what your stance is when it comes to applying these kinds of concepts or not to AI systems, could also significantly impact how you interact with them and how you relate to them. And I think there's a lot of work to be done for philosophy. And that's it. Thank you.
벌써 이렇게 시간이 빠르게 지나가가지고.
So as you know, the time flies by.
철학자의 시선에서
So from the philosopher's point of view, he talked about how we can achieve AGI and how robotics is very important, and how it can form a relationship with humans. And I believe that it was a great presentation. Thank you very much. Let's thank him with a big round of applause, because, you know, we are short of time, so we are just going to move on to the next presentation. Next presentation is going to be given by Professor Kim Jung, who is also Dean of the School of Mechanical Engineering.
말 한마디로 굉장한 영향력을 주신.
So he's been influencing greatly the KAIST AI Philosophy Research Center, because, you know, this philosophy center is not just about the philosopher talking about things, but it will a place where everyone can participate, engineers and all these other participants. And he's going to talk about how we can view this. Thank you for inviting me. I have this engineer's mind amongst the great philosophers here. So there was this brain interface paper, which I was like the co-author when it comes to a great achievement, and I believe that this is the second achievement for helping opening of this KAIST AI Philosophy Research Center. And so today I'm going to talk about this performance robotics. So if you look at this MIT Technology Review, as you can see in this picture, this robots can live within the households. And in the year of 2025, I feel like, it something that I've discussed before. And let me briefly introduce myself. And I study this the touching senses, and I think that is like one of the most the first thing that came out. And I believe as the humans, we have it but I believe that it will be the last sensory perceptions that the robotics will have. Because we communicate with other people through hugs and all these skinships. And when we live together with our pets, we communicate with them through touching the skins. And so the people's skin system, it's something that it's very difficult to be translated to robotics. And when I talk about AI, it started off from it mimicked from the vision, but when it comes to touching senses, it is something that it's very difficult. So it is very difficult for the robots to feel the people's faces. And if you look at the robots at top, we have created this very hands that can be outperforming people's actual hands. But however, there are some of the issues related to it. So that's why I felt like there are a lot of things that we still need to work on. So as you know, that there's Jensen Huang and Elon Musk who are leading this technology world. And in June 2024, he talked about AI. The next wave of AI is physical AI. And after 1.5 years, he said the Chat GPT moment for physical AI is here. So within 1.5 years, he said, the thing that he talked about, the next wave came already. And so Elon Musk said, the humanoid robots will be spread right across stuff, and it was shown in the Boston Dynamics. I mean, if I look at physical AI symbolically, as you can see, there's that thing that's marked in red is the physical AI. When you put on the things the equipments to play the when we think about physical AI, we talk about recognition AI and also generative AI. What can we make out of this generative AI? And when we talk about agent AI, what is that we can make this smart machines to work on? And so all these things work on this physical phenomena, because for the physical AI, sensing is very important. And the second thing is, the most important thing will be the interaction. We perceive information, but it can also be altered. And the third thing is, throughout this long time, they build on these habits. Let's say if you play the soccers, and if you look at the metrics, you download for a second, but you need to do that for a long time. So that is also part of physical AI. So the difference between physical AI and AI is that AI has this this coding, but the physical AI, it doesn't have the coding system. So the RGB, Hangul alphabet, it does not have it. So for physical, it's very difficult. So when we talk about traditional AI, it's been developed over past years and it has reached to physical AI. But we talk about this like old robots. Those are the programmable machines. Let's say if there's this like one machine, and if let's say it's called A machine, and if we can reprogram it, then it becomes the machine B. So for this like old robots, there's no sensors or the intelligence. It was very limited, but it was tweaked here and there. But now that it has developed to AI, we were able to create all these like agent technologies like A, B, C, and then so that which enabled this like physical AI, which is the combination of intelligence, body, physical world, understanding humans. And as what our president said, like post robotics is that it has learned how the environment works, and so this like physical AI needs to learn how they can interact with humans. Why physical AI is difficult? Because there's this thing called the Moravec's paradox. Because like what is easy for humans is hard for machines, and what is hard for humans is easy for machines. So what it means is that there are all this like complex stuff that we're making, and we're making the patterns and things like that. So like AI is very good at it, but for the physical AI to like sit down and walk, stand up and walk and things like that, it'd be a bit difficult for that. What it means is that so it falls under this like Moravec's paradox, because sometimes for the robots, like for them like standing is harder for them to sit down. So for the physical AI, what we say is that we talk about the Moravec's paradox. So that's why we think that physical AI is the final AI that we need to work on. So for the like sensory and the motor skills, it's kind of like internalized within us. And something that can be internalized. And for those like internalized stuff is very difficult to code, and it does not have any like the numbers. So what happens is that we need to like have the cameras to get it like pictured, and for the robots to learn it. And if you look at the history of robots, there were many different waves. We made this like AI. We made AI because we wanted to do robotics, and when there was the robots did not gain that much of attention, then we moved on to the AI back and forth and things like that. And so the first thing that was that in the first way was the factory automation, because like if you make Sonata, they can make Genesis, but it cannot make the airplane. So there is that difference there. And the sensor, it's kind of for the emergency use, but we do not use it for the judgments. And the second thing is that the service robots, and we talk about the hospitals, because there's this which entered into the human spaces, and so we started using this like service robots, and also we have defined accountability of it, because so there's like surgery robots cannot be used when there are doctors because of this accountability issue. And then it moved on to the bio-inspired robots, which are actually called humanoids. And so these like service robots are not just working in the robot, not just in the factory, but elsewhere. And the third thing is that we talk about physical AI. We talk about LLM, VLM, which are just based on the transformation. We put on this like massive memory for it to do a lot of things through stimulations and also create the next technology. So it coexists with others. And when it comes to China, they have made this humanoids that are, only worth like 10 million like US dollars. Sorry, 10 million Korean won. So if you look at the humanoids, they are cleaning robots. We put onto the like human scale form factor that there are two factors that influenced humanity. Some is car, second is smartphone, and as you all know, and the next form factor is the humanoid. So it enters into the human space and do something that humans can do and coexist with humans. And as you know, that there's this like low birth rate, and there are some of the hardwares that has advanced, and the other thing is that in China they are making all these robots, so that's why this hardware technology advanced. And we talk about this rare earth, and it goes into the robots like for the magnetics, and so that's why this like rare earth material all comes from China. And so we, as you can see, there's this like tech race, global tech race, and it is something that where China, United States, and Korea are all participating to run this race. And if you look at this, there are not that many like fingers. Like if you look at all these like robots, I feel like this like finger technology is still like far behind. And if you look at all these like robots, they come into our daily life and they communicate with humans. And we talk about like prosthetics and all these things. Like so, all these like different types of parts of the robots that can be somehow equipped on top of like humans' bodies. So this human-robot interaction can come out as I believe that it will come out in the post-robotics, and it is the interaction, is the study and design of how humans and robots perceive, interpret, and respond to each other. And when we talk about physical AI, it could be like the prosthetics and things like that. And the post AI, we could move into the like emotional space where we can communicate with them. And so, accuracy is important, but at the same time, the interaction with humans and respond to humans is will be important. And how we can have this like soft skin and communicate with people and like those friendly robots. And the most advanced robots, can it be adequate for HRI? And I don't think that would be true. If you look at Japan, Sony Aibo, it came out in the year of 1999, and then it was equipped with AI, and they came out in the year of 2018. And what they did is that they made this like Aibo, which is like barking at people, like if you look at people's faces. And what they did was that they changed all these like parts and components. And what Sony did was that they started like stop producing it. And if you look at the picture, as you can see, like on the second picture, there are no robots that are working, but because it's not working anymore, what they do is they have this like monks are like wishing for their like death to be post-life, happiness of their post-lives. So if you look at it, is it like accurate? It's not that much, but it was the robot that was like that interacted with humans, so that's why people really like that robot in Japan. And there's a thing called like uncanny valley. So it is a theory made by Masahiro Mori. And what is that? People feel uncomfortable if the robots become like 100% similar to humans. So if you look at zombie, they're very like a bit like they are humans, but then they're a bit different from us. Like it walks a little weirdly and slowly. And it would be the same as the robots, and it is something that we need to work on. And I'm sure that you must have watched this like movie, robotics movie. It's somehow like mimicked to like humans, but like people did not really like it. So like if you look at the pets, it's walking on their 4 feet, but if we try to make it to walk on 2 feet, then it'll be a bit like feel uncomfortable to us. We need to think about how robots can become more human-like in appearance, but we also need to like design the robots that can be acceptable to humans. So we need to make good robots at the same time.
이거 보시면은 그냥 위에 좀 열어주시겠습니까? 비디오. 그냥 영국에서 그냥 찍혔는데요.
So this was the footage taken in UK, and if you take a look at it, its movements, what it does is that it's running wild, and if you have a child, wild child, and it never happened to my daughters because they were good, but if you have this like boys who are very active, it is something that when we talk about this like socially acceptable robots, as what Mashiro said, it has to be the robots that has like predictable behaviors, and it should have like soft behaviors. And it also respects humans, interaction with humans, and coexist with humans, and that's what we call like social acceptable robots. And we need to be emotionally accepting those robots, and it also have like a meaning. It should be like some kind of meaning like socially. So if we think about like if the functionally great like robots are good for us, it's the question that we still have. Like if it like socially good robots for us, that is something that we need to think about. So in society, like the robots that can be well accepted by people, it needs to have certain amounts of like performance, but at the same time, it needs to interact well with humans. In HRI case study, what they talk about is that they talk about autism. I don't know well, but like the children with autism, they have difficulties by looking at the lights and making eye contacts. And if you look at this robot, it's called Q robot. It's very simple. It has a simple appearance, and its facial expression is very consistent, and it moves very slowly. So the children with autism spectrum disorder, they may feel like familiar with these robots. So in the United States, they use this type of robots because with like such intelligence and its intelligence and the behaviors, it is acceptable to autism kids. Because they only need like this real-time intelligence on site, because it makes all these like eye contacts and has the intelligence that are acceptable to this ASD kids, and these type of robots are being used for treating these kids. I only have 1 minute left. So going forward, there's this like forecast that 75% of jobs in the United States are projected to be replaceable by robots, and replacing 100% is the worst scenario. So more and more of the robots will be coming into the human space, and how we are going to treat them. Are we going to treat them like as pets, and what are we going to do with them? Because their life expectancy will be like maybe 4 or 5 years, just like cars, and we don't know how we are going to reuse it or how we are going to put under the ground and things like that. We still do not have anything for that. So what we need to so the physical is to study how these like robots work and interact in the interact. And going forward, we also need to think about and study how it is going to interact with humans. So how robots feel, it was actually like shown in many movies and things like that. And there's a thing called Proto on Netflix, and it is Atom, the name of the robot. And Urasawa Naoki is the cartoonist who drew this cartoon, and perhaps you can read it for fun, because physical AI robots, it goes beyond GPU and cameras, and we need to think about how we could live with all these pets. It could live with pets and the humans. And we also need to think about how the population, including the AIs, can live together with us on this earth. And so lastly, I would like to talk about what we are promoting. We think about the software and how we could give the warmth to people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Kim Jung, for your presentation. And as I always, when we talk about robots and how they will actually be used and what will be the concerns of the people who make them, especially when we talked about the autistic spectrum, the robots that can help people with on the autistic spectrum and how we can help people, I realize that the engineers are also thinking about the human aspect of robots. And really, we need to think about what are good robots to humans, and I believe that many professors are on us and on the same page with us when it comes to robots. So because we don't have so many time, we would like to not take questions now. We can take questions during the panel discussion. And our next speaker is currently in France, and I will try to make this speedy. So Kim Hae-young is a researcher in Paris at the Husserl Archives, and the speaker has a connection with KAIST. The speaker talked with KAIST president and also with me, and we talked about the future of KAIST, of AI transformation. And also, this was a person who let me know about the Kyoto Research Center for Philosophy, and so we received so much help for the establishment of our Philosophy Research Center. I heard it is 4 a.m. in Paris, so thank you very much. All right, please let's give the speaker a big round of applause.
Hi, thank you. 감사합니다. 이렇게 중요하고
Thank you so much for inviting me to
좋은
this
자리에 함께할
important
수 있게 해주셔서
and
정말
meaningful
감사드립니다.
event.
저는 발제를 영어로 하겠습니다.
I'll be speaking in English.
파워포인트 지금 보실 수 있으신가요?
Can you look at the slides that I have prepared?
오케이. 네, 시작하겠습니다.
Okay, then I'll begin.
다시 약간 철학의 문제로 넘어가서 이야기를 해볼 건데요.
We'll be talking
So,
about
alright,
philosophy.
I'm gonna start my presentation in English. So I'm going to talk about philosophy a bit more again. So why do we need philosophy for the development of artificial intelligence and for navigating this new era shaped by unprecedented technological change? Philosophy is often misunderstood as the study of the history of ideas or abstract theories. When you think of philosophy, you just think about sometimes these big names, Kant and Heidegger and so on. While the historical dimension is very important, showing us how we've come to think, see, and understand the world, ourselves, and what lies beyond, philosophy is far more than that. As Descartes once proclaimed, and Heidegger, the German philosopher Martin Heidegger, also echoed in his famous inaugural lecture, What is Metaphysics? Philosophy is the root of all sciences. This image speaks to philosophy's role not as a mere repository of old doctrines, but as a living activity that gives birth to new ways of thinking. At its core, philosophy is the art of questioning, and questions are difficult. They are the beginning of all thinking. Without a question, there can be no real learning. To question something is not simply to be curious. It is to approach a matter in a way that seeks comprehension. Philosophical questioning constructs the basic framework through which we begin to understand anything, even when we lack prior knowledge or experience. And philosophy is about also creating the first distinctions that allow us to perceive and make sense of the world. It is about giving structure to our seeing. Take, for instance, the concept of time. What is time? This is not merely a philosophical question, but philosophy gives us the foundational tools to approach it. Today, we think of time as measurable, structured by past, present, and future. We speak of its duration, of how it moves and how we move within it, assuming a framework that dates back to Aristotle. Even after the revolutions of Newtonian physics and Einstein's relativity, and even after that, the fundamental conception of time remains deeply influenced by this ancient lineage. And this is why we study philosophy, not to memorize Aristotle's theory, but to understand how he asked his questions, how he approached the world. The point is not to repeat past answers, but to learn how to ask the right questions ourselves. Great thinkers exist across all domains, not only in academic philosophy, but whether in science, literature, or daily life, genuine understanding always begins with reflection. What do we want to understand? How? Why? These are philosophical questions. And especially today, in an age of rapidly evolving technologies that humanity has never encountered before, we need new tools, new frames to make sense of what is happening. Our understanding always lags behind our technical abilities, meaning we create things before we fully grasp their meaning, their use, or their consequences. We act a posteriori, after the fact. But philosophy does not offer technical answers about AI, but provides the framework for questioning what AI means for us and how it reshapes our understanding of ourselves and the world. Understanding is not merely conceptual, but existential, shaping how we live and relate to technology. Since all science and technology operate within philosophical paradigms, the emergence of AI calls for a collective philosophical effort to rethink consciousness, knowledge, and human existence. And in this context, one of the most urgent questions today concerns consciousness. We ask whether machines can be conscious or whether they think like we do. But this question already presupposes that we know what consciousness is. In fact, consciousness is not a self-evident concept. There are deep philosophical disagreements about whether consciousness even exists and what it really means. The history of modern philosophy can be understood as an attempt to understanding itself, because consciousness is deeply related to our understanding, our perception. When we speak of consciousness in our modern world, we usually mean subjective consciousness. That means it is my consciousness. The subject is understood as an autonomous, individual, reflective being, separated from others and from the world. It's very simple. I am a thinking being. This model of subjectivity has shaped modern philosophy, science, politics, and technology. In fact, our world. Most discussions about artificial intelligence silently assume this model. When we ask whether a machine is conscious, we often imagine consciousness as an inner, private state belonging to an individual subject. And this assumption needs to be questioned. And here I'd like to introduce a little bit of what I've been doing as a philosopher. So my own research begins with a simple but radical question. Am I really a single isolated subject? Modern thought tends to understand we as a collection of individuals I plus I, like I and you come together and we become we. But this model has produced many problems, as you probably are very well aware of. A problem of the other minds, how I understand even other people, other things, and how can even a conversation be possible? If each consciousness is completely private, then how is understanding is possible, especially between us? But yet, in lived experience in our daily life, we know that understanding, interpersonal understanding, happens all the time. What I suggest here is that we is not merely a sum of individual subjects. Rather, there is a more fundamental field of connectedness within which subjects emerge. I call this a presubjective relation. And this does not deny individuality. It means that individuality is never the absolute starting point. Understanding, communication, and even self-consciousness arise within shared structures of meaning. And I'm sure that this is not, nothing new to many of you, because despite this modern development of philosophy based on this isolated singular subject or conscious subject, in our daily life, we experience all the time this sharedness or connectedness on many different layered levels, on epistemological, existential, political, social, phenomenological levels. So it's just that we needed a new tool or new frame in philosophy to understand this connectedness with a better wording, basically. And also in this context, why we have to talk about why this matters to us in terms of AI, especially. So if we continue to think of consciousness only in terms of isolated individual subjects, we will project outdated metaphysical models onto new technologies. Artificial intelligence forces us to rethink not only machines, but ourselves. It challenges our assumptions about mind, self, and relation. Philosophy helps us reflect on these assumptions and imagine new ways of coexistence between human and non-human beings. Philosophy is not opposed to technology. It provides the context in which technology can be understood. There is no science and no technology without a worldview. There is no innovation without a conception of what it means to be human. In an age shaped by artificial intelligence, philosophy is not a luxury. It is a necessity, because as long as we exist as human beings, we are beings who seek understanding. Thank you so much for your attention. I try to make it short, so I hope it was somewhat understandable.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kim Young, for your presentation. So when we talk about the subjectivity of humans, is a very important part of philosophy, and you have discussed how that is important in the age of AI. So thank you very much for your presentation. So I think we have time for about one question. Are there any questions from the floor?
Thank you, Dr. Kim, for your wonderful presentation. My name is Jun Jun. I'm a sociologist in KAIST. I have a question about your concept of subjectivity, which could actually easily go beyond the individual subjectivity. So your research interest is about the intersubjectivity or collective subjectivity that goes beyond the individual entity. What would be the good model for the robot with an AI that can have some subjectivity beyond the individual? Because robotics is basically interested in the individual technical physicality. So what would be the good way to make sense of or realize that kind of intersubjective or collective subjectivity in a real world?
Thank you so much for your question. So this question leads us back to the question of consciousness, because when you want to call anything subject, it assumes that it is a conscious subject automatically. And so if we assume that a machine is a conscious subject interacting with us, although it's not the same type of consciousness, then we have the same question again. So when we interact with a robot, we form this we. We become we. But is this we something created by coming together? Or is this something that is this we something that is already there before these two different individual subjects come together? So when we think of this we in this regard, in this light, as in the presubjective, that's my term, connected field, then we can think of something like shared consciousness, which is different from I as a subjective consciousness or conscious subject coming together with another subject, and we try to understand each other and communicate and interact. But there is already this common understanding or possibility of understanding. So, I mean, it still sounds very ambiguous, I'm sure, and very abstract. But even with a machine, when we want to think of a machine as some sort of being, even if it's not exactly like a human being, then we can think of it in terms of this connected, shared field of thinking or consciousness. And I don't know exactly specifically how this could help to build a machine, but I think it could change the view to see the robot and how it can interact with us and how we can treat this robot as another being outside of me. I'm sorry, I'm being a little long, I guess.
No worries, no worries. Yeah. 시간이 다 되어서
Yes.
저희가 이제 김혜영 박사님은 특별히 이제 온라인으로 접속하시니까 질문을
So Dr. Kim is with us online, so I don't think you'll be able to be here for the Q&A session. So we have the Q&A session now. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you so much. 고맙습니다.
And thank you for joining us so early in the morning.
예, 그럼 이제
All right, so
의 마지막
now we'll go on to the last presentation, which actually I am the speaker.
그 오늘 이제 사회도 보고 발표.
And so I am the MC and I'm also a presenter, so it is a bit awkward. But so I will stand somewhere in the middle of the MC and the presenter spot to give my presentation. Hello, once again, I would say hello. I am glad to see everyone here today. I am the Dean of the KAIST AI, Director of the KAIST AI Philosophy Research Center, Kim Dong-woo. So today I would like to talk about the era of post-AI and post-robotics and the role of philosophy. I want to, of course there are many small issues, but because we are having the inaugural ceremony, I believe it's best if I show you my vision. So I brought a big topic. So what is the role of philosophy? What kind of role should philosophy play? And what is the direction of our research center? And why the center is necessary for an institution like KAIST? And as we have seen, AI and robotics continues to transform. It is transforming everything. We have so many examples already mentioned, but I'm sorry that I didn't write where I got these photos, but you can see the lattice robot, and you can see how robots are changing the way factories are run. AlphaFold is another example that was already mentioned, and how we predict amino acid sequence. And also for developing materials, AI is being used. And when you are on the internet or when you see YouTube, the algorithm is already there. So AI is changing our lives incrementally. In this era of AI, I think there are three main transformations that AI is bringing. There is the industrial transformation. So the three specific transformations. First is the industrial transformation. You're seeing exponential growth in productivity and expansions in industrial frontiers. Second is the intellectual transformation. So not just in industry, but also in science, but even in math, philosophy, social sciences, and psychology, arts. We are seeing advancements and enrichments in intellectual achievements. And we are seeing new methods of these achievements, and we are seeing a diversity of the achievements. And the third but not least is the institutional transformation. So this is an era that is a bit conservative, and the change may be a bit slow. But again, we are seeing data-driven design and delivery of policies and public services. You are looking at how customized services can be provided by using AI. So there are three main transformations: industrial, intellectual, and institutional. But nowadays, people are talking about the AI bubble, and people are wondering if AI really is that much. There are some people who ask, is this really the great transformation? Is it so worthy that we could call it the fourth or fifth industrial revolution? Is it really that different? And regarding that question, I want to bring up 2 points. First of all, AI and robotics is not limited to certain sectors. It can be in various sectors, and it is an immensely powerful tool. But if you look at how these tools are being used, each individual tool may seem small. For example, predicting proteins, how will that change my life? There's an algorithm when I watch the YouTube videos. How can that really change my life? I need to do the laundry, I need to eat. So that's still the same. So you can, of course, think that. But each of these little changes, if you bring them together, it becomes a very large transformation. So we are dividing these little problems, but if you combine them all together, it's a big problem. So 20 years ago, when I was a freshman in college, the biggest technology at the time was the iPhone. I believe you all have a smartphone. The iPhone back in 20 years was the biggest technology. Right now, what is the biggest technology? If you look a little bit into the future, I believe it will be using robots to develop Mars. There are people who have that vision. So in just 20 years ago, iPhone was the biggest innovation in technology. Now we are talking about providing internet all over the world using artificial satellites. We are talking about sending robots to Mars to develop Mars. And when it comes to cancer, we are making new medicines. So all these small progresses, really, if you bring them together, they become a huge transformation. So skepticism regarding the Great Transformation, I believe, focus only on the small changes and is not looking at the big picture. But I believe that skepticism, saying there is no great transformation, I do understand people who have that stance. I understand the people who take that stance because we cannot predict the future. We don't know how the future will change. So it is natural to have skepticism. If you think of my life and your future, if you think about 10 or 20 years into your future, it's difficult to predict exactly what will happen. So for those who cannot imagine what their future will be, the future becomes something that is unknown, and you feel like your life will not change. And that is why some people are skeptical about AI. And so that skepticism may seem correct, but this is what I want to, this is my prognosis, in that nobody knows what the future will be. And part of that will be changed by technology, or we may run out of natural resources. We can see an explosion of the sun. But importantly, the future is something that we make ourselves. So when we talk about we don't know what will happen in the future, that means that we are not sure about what kind of future we want to make. So we don't have that certainty about ourselves. We don't have that detailed image of what we want to make our future. What will we do with this technology? What should I do? What must I do? If we don't have a clear image of what that will be, then of course we don't know what the future will be, and then we will feel anxious. And these technology may not seem like a big deal if you don't have that image about the future. So I believe that yes, the future is uncertain, but we cannot say that this is because technology doesn't play a big role. It is because we don't know what to do with these technologies for our future. So an uncertainty for the future is an uncertainty about ourselves. And I believe that this uncertainty about ourselves is what makes philosophy necessary. Because in this era of the Great Transformation, we have to decide what kind of future we want to make. And to make that future, I think we need to ask ourselves 3 philosophical questions. So the 3 big questions is, first of all, about ourselves. So with AI and robotics in our lives, it's very close in our lives. So then with these technologies, what can we know and what can we do? That is the first question. The second question is what must we do? Last, what may we hope? If we cannot answer these 3 questions, then we cannot see where we will go with this new technology. We cannot see our goal. And that is what leads to uncertainty. And these tools are enormous tools. If we know what we can do and what we must do and what we hope to do, of course we will be very confused and we will just be swept by the big waves. And if I write these questions, there will be people here who study philosophy. I think you will understand right away. This is what Kant said in his most important works of literature. He said that these are the 3 big questions for humans. So these are the 3 biggest questions for humans. And in the era of AI, with these enormous tools and technology, we once again have to ask ourselves these 3 questions. And I believe this is where we can find the role of philosophy. So in this age of the Great Transformation, we want to think about what we can do, what we must do, and what we want to do. And we want to make clear of what that is. And so we are not swept by the big waves of technology. We are choosing our own goal and we are rowing toward that goal. So we have to be the authors of our own future. We need to have that authority over our own lives. And becoming that kind of existence and helping others, the world become that existence is the role of philosophy. That is this is the role of philosophy in the age of AI. And we want to become the authors of our own future. That is the role of philosophy in this age of AI. But then there could be people who question, but why philosophy? Because there are other fields that can also play that role. So why philosophy? When I first began these discussions, the President Lee helped me and Professor Kim Jung also helped me, and I also talked with Professor Park Jin-young in my department. And the professors in psychology always talk about the limitations of philosophy. So it is great to be able to work in this, to work with professors from many different fields, and it is really helping me break the walls of philosophy and leave my own shell. And being here really helped me open my eyes. But of course, there is a role that only philosophy can play. So why philosophy? First of all, human decisions and actions are inherently value-laden. So this may sound like something very grand, but it's actually not. So everything has value. So let's say there is an exam. It's not an open book exam, but then there's a student who looks at their textbook. But that, we call that cheating. Let's say a student said they opened their book. We don't say the student opened the book during the exam and looked at the book. We say that student cheated on the exam. Second, let's say that you're riding a bus and there's a elderly on the bus and then you gave up your seat for them. There were people. You're not just merely standing up. You are giving up your seat to the elderly. What I want to say is cheating, giving up your seat. This is not, of course, not the only way that we can explain human behavior. What I'm saying is that it's the standard to understand our world like this. This is the way that we look at the world. Let's say you read a textbook during an exam. That logically does not make sense to humans. So when humans look at society, we already have this value. We already have that value within us. So because our actions already intrinsically have value, we need some kind of justification for our actions and decisions, because we are trying to reach some goal or make something happen. So, and if we want to justify something, we need to have the reasons for that. But of course, the justification is not only in facts. For example, we want to go to Mars, we want to get the resources from Mars, that's not all. We want to develop the resources. Is that colonization or development of resources? We need to just make a decision. So really, we need to think about our values. So I will give you some examples. Is it okay to, let's say Jensen Huang talked about in his interview that there will be an AI robot assistant who will help you. But then I always bring up this example. Let's say in the past, when your TV didn't work, people would hit the TV and then it would start working again. Let's say you have an AI robot assistant. If you slap it, would that be okay? It feels a bit wrong, right? Okay, then let's go on to, let's say we send humanoid robots to Mars to develop it. And then during the process, we realize that the very basic forms of life is on Mars. And if you leave that alone, it can lead to a condition like the Earth. Then should humans develop Mars? Shouldn't we think about the autonomy and the freedom of Mars? So these are the values that we think about, and we cannot be free from such questions. And so we will be meeting these questions very soon. So these technologies, when we meet them, the president of KAIST, I think, made a very good point when he said that when there is technological development, it will have an effect on the humans' roles and humans' decision-making. So let's say the idea of freedom that was only given to the bourgeois is now given to laborers and women. And for example, will we also give that to robots as well? Will we also give robots autonomy, a sense of autonomy? Because if you look at just the technology, they don't have these kinds of values intrinsic in the technology. So there's a need to newly design the robots based on our values and our decisions. And really, this is where philosophy can play a role. And so we want to look and reflect upon human and social values. And this can become a very important question in our in the new era. So, but philosophy is always an era of discussion, and there are people who say philosophy has no value. Philosophy, so let's say, as I said before, there are questions like, can we slap a AI robot in the face? You may think, well, that's not a big problem because that's not what will decide the future of humans. But what I want to say is that technology provides us with the material basis. Philosophy provides with a basis about our actions. So can we develop Mars or not? Should we develop Mars or not? That will become the question that leads our actions. And you can have your own stance about that. And if you want to justify your stance and earn a consensus on your stance, technology will give you the material basis, but philosophy will give us the mental and the ideological basis. And we will be able to talk with people and discuss with people and debate to find a conclusion. So again, technology will bring material basis, and philosophy will bring the spiritual and mental basis. And there are other big questions like, what is human rights? What is liberty? How can we deal with these questions? These questions may seem very vague. We need to deal with them, each and every one of them. So we want to divide the questions into little small parts. And philosophy is no exception. And if we continue to have these kind of philosophical decisions and discussions on these small parts, and once that comes together, then, as you have seen how the development of history has made the basis for society, the discussions that we have in philosophy will become the big basis for the future of technology. So, the mission of KAIST is to advance innovation in science and technology and to cultivate the next generation of leaders. So for these people, I believe, especially for the KAIST students, we need philosophy. Why? When I was preparing for this presentation, I looked at the mission statement of Genesis in the United States. I looked at the policies. I saw the policy research that was taking place in Korea. There's a difference. The United States very clearly see what they will do. They say they will make data sets. They will do something in space. They very specifically set what they will do. So the academics and Jensen Huang and Elon Musk, these people already have these very specific ideas about what they will do with the technology, and they are pushing forward with that goal. But right now, we are just focusing on following up with these technologies. And as Professor Kim Jung said before, I fully agree that there are many scientists and engineers in Korea, and they already have a very clear idea of what they want to do. But we want to build a social consensus, and if you want to justify and have discussions about that, we must have those discussions. And the future generations, I believe in terms of technology, KAIST is already at a globally leading level. But if you want to be at the level of Jensen Huang or Elon Musk, or if you want to make even better leaders, then we need leaders who want to set a vision about what we will do, what we will aim for in the future. So there needs to be a vision about humans, about society. We need people like that. And so for these people, what we need to provide is not talking about what can I do, what do I know, and their social responsibility. So the philosophy will help people learn this self-understanding, social responsibility, and a vision for the future. It will create the mental basis for their work. And for KAIST students, when they go beyond KAIST and when they grow into leaders to change the world, they will need this kind of mental basis. So I believe that philosophy will offer the intellectual foundations for the mission of KAIST. So we will need to work on working on these small questions, but we need to keep our eye on the biggest on the big question. And only when we work together can we go together towards a better future. So I believe that philosophy is essential for KAIST, and it also is needed for our society. Thank you.
So once again, I'm back as the MC. So back to a humble MC. In the interest of time, we will skip the break time and go straight into panel discussion to allow our participants to have their lunch and to engage in other schedules. First, we have Hyunduk Chun, Director of AI-LC Center SNU, and Chang-Gyu Lee, Director of AI Humanities Research Institute, and also Shinichi Takagi, Research Manager at Kyoto Institute of Philosophy. So while establishing our AI Philosophy Research Center, we have prepared the session to engage and collaborate with fellow researchers. And now, I'll hand over the mic to other MC, our co-director, Professor Seohyun Chung. Good morning, I'm Seohyun Chung. I study literature at KAIST, so I'm pleased to join this important session. Director Kim has served many roles, and now, as the director, he will be participating in this panel discussion as the moderator. So the third panel discussion So the third panel discussion, we will listen to our participants for their keynote speech and then to provide your inputs and insights, and also we'll engage with the audiences as well. So first I will invite Director Chan.
Hello, I am Hyunduk from Seoul National University. Thank you very much for inviting me. So I am a philosopher as well, and I'm not here as just as a philosopher. I am operating the AI LC Center at Seoul National University, so I want to talk a bit about how to operate an AI philosophy center. You gave me 5 minutes, so I want to talk a little bit about how my center is being operated. Our center is a part of the Seoul National University Research Center. And so we talk about ethics, law, and the social impact of AI. I have also prepared some slides. We have people who have majored in philosophy, law, those who are also in psychology and social studies as well. All right, going on to the next slide. And what we made, we were first established in 2020, and the AI Research Center was also established then. And we made the Leading Innovate Research Center in 2020. So in the past, we discussed a lot about AI philosophy or ethics and law, and there was also committee members who were dealing with AI law, who had discussions in AI law, and I was in the Department of Philosophy, and Professor Kim Hyun-soo was there with me, and we also had professors from social sciences. So we said we should work together, and I contacted the professors, and I asked them to work together at our center. And so we were able to bring the professors from the various different backgrounds to make our team. And we set up a proposal, and we were selected. So from 2020, we are operating our center. And so we had some people from so many different backgrounds: law, philosophy, social sciences, and more. And of course, we are all interested in philosophy and AI, but we had different approaches and different backgrounds, so we were able to learn from each other. So we took some time to learn from each other, and we are expanding our work. And every year we are renewing our project. So what we do is, of course, we do research, and we also have open seminars or symposiums, and we learn about what is the newest issues when it comes to AI and philosophy. And we write something called the LC report. Part of that is academic, and part of it is policy. So we set out this report, and we have published the 4th LC report recently. And just to go over what we have done, some of our similar work is that we held an LC symposium about the ethical, legal, and social issues of generative AI. We also talked about the cognition of AI. And so we called professors, scientists and engineers to have these discussions. Last year, in winter, we had a workshop on philosophy of machine learning. So we invited some of the leading scholars in machine learning to have this international symposium. We also have some subjects for the general public. We talked with the Go master Isidore and had a special lecture with him. We also had a scenario contest about what the future will be for AI and our lives in 2050. And we worked with many artists to make this happen. This is the report that we set forth, the LC report. I just wanted to introduce you to that. And we have some small internal projects, and we have some seed money for that research. And the reason we have this project is to make the teams and to kind of win the bid for big projects in their departments. And it was possible for us to run this center because we have the professors, and then we have the student researchers. We have about 10 student researchers. About 30 or 40% participate. And we have students from various different roles, backgrounds participating. And Seoul is also running this college-centered research center. And one of that is doing research on social impact. And for science and technology, that research is also very important as well. So Seoul National University is playing a big role when it comes to AI ethics. We also have a team working about the social impact of AI and such, etc. So we are in this project for the 3rd year. It is the IITP grant on general AI and R&D. It's an R&D project. And so we are in a consortium for this project. It's a very big consortium, and we are running at about 1/10 of that size. So it's very easy for outsiders to criticize our work. So we want to talk about exactly how then we will change the issues and change and improve the problems. So we want to make this benchmark for generative AI. Going on to the last slide. I think I already used up my 5 minutes. So to briefly share my thoughts. So, of course, our center is not a philosophy center. We, in general, we draw with AI ethics, but also law and much more. So, when it comes to AI ethics, one thing to think about is who is the audience. I think, so I do research in philosophy, and I also write papers in philosophy. And this is written for philosophers. But also, I think we could learn the development of AI and then apply it to philosophy. But we also tend to strengthen traditional philosophy such as what is liberty, what is freedom, what is consciousness. So we once again, are thinking about those basic fundamental philosophical questions. And for engineers, there, of course, we can come up with vague issues, but for engineers, they make the models and they conduct the data. We need to know what kind of problems they are facing in that process. And then we want to figure out what are the social or ethical issues that they face. And when we talk about social impact, we don't know exactly how AI is working, but there are many people who are affected by AI. So it can be an issue of literacy as well, but we want to understand how AI is impacting society, and that will help us know and make plans about how we will introduce AI technology. And of course, these are very inter- and transdisciplinary work, and we need the institutional support for this interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary work to take place. I believe that KAIST will also provide a lot of support. I think the biggest thing that we need is funding for people. So we need to invest in people, and I believe that will lead to great outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you. So he talked about how many different agents are required and the resources are required, and he has experienced it already, and he shared his know-hows. So I find it very meaningful to have all these panelists who have a lot of experiences in and abroad. And next we are going to invite director from AI Humanities Research Center at Chungang University. So my major was Korean. And at Chungang University, we have this AI Humanities Research Center. And the reason why we started it was because on my 4th year of my college life, I had this curiosity. And at the time, I went to this computing sciences, and I heard this one course. And I received C, which was my lowest grade in my college life. And that was the beginning of my curiosity in this area. But I think it was quite helpful for me because during my PhD years, there's this Fujitsu Japanese company, and it studied machine learning, and it worked on this translation, and they said that they need someone who has expertise on AI. But because of that course, I was able to, take part in this project, and I worked on it for 3 years. And because I went to my college in 1981. And I did use this pickup method to do the translation in the 90s while I worked for this Japanese company. And because I was studying on this language, I was kind of interested in how the machine could learn language and understand language. And in the year of 2016, there was this Lee Se-do professional Go player match with AlphaGo, and that time I came to the understanding that that the machine can understand human language. And that's when we made this Humanities Artificial Intelligence Research Center. So I applied for the government grant, and at the time I have received the biggest research fund for studying the humanities on AI. And I gathered the people who are the leaders in that area and was able to start that research center. So our first topic was that how AI could influence our society. And in the beginning, what we did was that can AI advance people's intellects? And that's where our discussion started. And as we conducted our studies in our first and second and third year, we started off as with like positive thoughts on AI, but we slowly, this pessimism grew within us over the years. I believe that there are many words to define humans, and and there's this one thing that humans are very unstable existence. And humans have this natural instinct to become this complete, perfect person, and I think that's the humans' trait. But as we have this age, or living into this AGI era, I love to play Go, and there are 4 different types of professional Go players. This A group, they're really good at playing Go, and they know how to utilize AI. And this B group, they know how to play Go well, but they don't utilize AI that well. And the C group is that they know how to utilize AI well, even though they don't know how to play Go well. And the C group is that they don't play Go that well, and also at the same time they don't know how to play AI, utilize AI well. And so this humanities, I believe that they are moving towards the structure in that way. So I'm becoming much more pessimistic about it. As you know, that not just Korea, but other countries are competing for this AI. And the biggest question is, why are we doing this competition? What would be the final goal, end goal of this competition? Where are we heading towards to? One area that we could forecast is predict is that we because we have this justification of doing AGI, but we're actually moving towards that because our dependency on AI will increase, and humans will start disconnect from one another, and people will be spending more time with humanoids. So then how can we cooperate? So what we want to study on with all these different professional scholars is that not just talking about the utilization, usefulness of AI, but we also need to talk about other areas. So for us to be prepared, and I'm going to spend the rest of my time to study.
Thank you very much. He has been doing this research very long in South Korea, and the center had led research on AI. I think his experience teaches us a lot, and our KAIST has been closely engaging with his center. So going forward, I look forward to having many more productive results. Next, I will invite Shinichi Takagi, Research Manager from Kyoto Institute of Philosophy.
Thank you for introduction. My name is Shunichi Takagi, and just as introduced, I'm Research Manager at Kyoto Institute of Philosophy. and I'm also affiliated with Kyoto University, the Department of Philosophy. So for my 5 minutes, let me talk through why our institute was established. And before that, let me extend our word of gratitude for our distinguished host in welcoming us here, and congratulations on the establishment of the center. So in a short story, the establishment of the Kyoto Institute of Philosophy is basically has the same purpose and vision as the KAIST AI Center. Our institute was established in July 2023 as a joint effort between Department of Philosophy led by Professor Deguchi, who gave a keynote speech today, and business leaders on the other hand. Most notably, at the time of establishment, NTT, the biggest telecom company in Japan, was also jointly established this institute. And fortunately, we could grow quickly, and several other companies such as Hitachi, Hakuhodo, Yomiuri Shimbun also joined in this initiative. And so our institute has, as part of our essential mission, to be transsectoral engagement and promoting transdisciplinary research. But you might ask why business leaders invested and got interest in philosophy. So, and in fact, when we visit as other institutions, people get surprised why business leaders in Japan serving as board members of this institute and then founded this institute. Well, this question can easily be answered by referring to Director Dwang Kim's question, or like a remark. Namely, business leaders do need philosophy. As he was saying, tech leaders often carries with themselves some certain vision of how future society should look like. And at the very director's level or chairperson's level, they feel the kind of questions they face often philosophical and deeply metaphysical, thinking at a large scale of civilization indeed. They are not thinking in, they are also thinking in a short time span how to fix this issue quickly in the next quarter. But at the same time, they have to respond to long-term questions, 1 century or even several centuries scale. I fortunately had some occasions to talk with, engaging in philosophical dialogues with our directors, and their interest is quite deeply metaphysics level. So as I was just saying, for instance, one of our directors interested in the Kyoto School of Philosophy, and Kitaro Nishida, who is a founder of Kyoto School, and his metaphysics, for instance, emphasized reconciliation of contradictions, as it were. In a philosophical jargon, it is called dialecticism, standpoint where contradictions can be embraced rather than rejected. And in this regard, I wish to come back to President Lee's keynote, and where he was emphasizing, putting emphasis on the importance of coexistence, or how we can coexist and flourish together. Our vision is to accept contradictions positively, and we and in fact, if we look at the history of philosophy in the 20th century, in particular in the field of logic, what happened was that realization that we can make sense of contradictions. We can there's a certain branch of logic called paraconsistent logic, where we do not have to reject contradiction, but contradictions does not necessarily mean something bad, but in fact it can be accepted. So that opened up the whole series of philosophical researches in which we can make sense of our Buddhist metaphysics and various other views. So I'm perhaps running time, so I'm going to make it quick. So, but we are quite delighted to be here and that to notice that how much we have in common, and we are looking forward to future collaboration.
네, 감사합니다. 아까부터
Thank you very
자주
much.
언급되었던 교토 철학 인스티튜트에서도
All right, so we've discussed a lot, and we've talked a lot about the Kyoto Philosophy Institute, so thank you for joining us. And we have heard from the leaders of these three philosophical centers. So would Director Kim Dong-woo would like to comment or ask any questions? All right, so first of all, I just want to make this short. So we are here with many senior professors, Professor Tae-Gyuchi, Professor Chun Young-duk, Professor Sang. You are all senior to me, and although it was not the Philosophy Research Center itself, I believe that when we talk about these transdisciplinary research, I believe you are the leaders in these areas of transdisciplinary research, especially for the Kyoto Institute. They call it transsectoral. I believe I was very impressed by that. So philosophy does transdisciplinary work, and it is also trying to find ways to work with the society in general, and also talk with companies and how we can make policies. That was very impressive to me, and I believe that is the direction that the KAIST Philosophy Center would also like to go to. So I would like to learn from our panelists today. We would like to open up the questions to the floor. We don't have a lot of time, so I think we'll be able to take a few short questions. Hello, I am from the Taeje Future Strategy Research Center. I'd like to ask a question to Professor Kim Dong-woo. So you talked about the three big questions. So for these three big questions, as President Lee of KAIST also said about us in the era of Human 2.0, then currently we are in the Humanity 1.5. Then in the Humanity 2.0, what is the order that we can continue peace upon? I would like to know your thoughts. Thank you for that question. So if I knew the answer to that, I think I could have become a greater philosopher. But I think I will have to try to become a great philosopher. So as I said before, we need to focus on solving these small problems piece by piece. So really, again, can we slap a robot assistant in the face? That may seem like a small question, but if you really think about it in depth, it's a very difficult question. So we want to answer these small questions one by one, and ultimately, I believe we will be able to find the bigger answer to that question. I am not entirely sure what the order will be in Humanity 2.0. One thing I forgot to mention is I think human society did not work by leaving people out. For example, there are many vegans. We want to respect the microorganisms. We want to talk about, there are people who think about the sovereignty of other planets. Of course, there is resistance. What I also always believe in is that human society has always progressed towards what is rational. And I don't think human rationality has lost in that battle. So I believe you need to have this optimism and not lose our optimism, and we'll be able to become a more inclusive society. Hello. I am one of the first graduates from KAIST, and I graduated from the philosophy, one of the first graduates of philosophy, and I am working and also have a family. And as Professor Kim Dong-woo mentioned before, you said the KAIST AI philosophy and the work that it needs to do. There are three things that we need to do. First of all, understanding the self, social responsibility, and setting a vision for the future. And I think this applies to everyone here. When it comes to understanding self, how can we understand the self better? What kind of methods are there? Thank you for that question. I believe this is a very important question. So could our panelists have some shares their thoughts? Because for me, I think I'm relatively young. I'm trying to understand myself. Perhaps our center heads, in your experience of running these centers, could you share any difficulties you had maybe in running the centers, and you came to some realizations about what you could do to understand the self better? It was a very difficult question. So I think even if I teach this for an entire semester, I wouldn't be able to answer that question. So I'm thinking about why I am here and what I am doing. And yesterday there was an article about there was a change in Korea's science and technology law. So I'm part of a committee, and I was asking myself, what is a philosopher doing in this science and technology committee? So in a general philosophical perspective, so we talked about going beyond humanism 2.0 and all. So the way we see humans and the way we see the self is changing. So we want to look at relationships. So if you think about the idea of the individual, so as an individual, I have my own consciousness, but to go beyond that, we think about our physical abilities, we think about our relationships, and that relationship, I think, is expanding. Basically, that will be human relationships, but it's also our relationships with nature, our relationships with the planet, and how are we also, what kind of relationships do we want with these non-human objects like robots and AI and civilization? And when we think about how we can define the self, you want to think about how I am in relations to an environment. So I think that environment can help define who I am. So I think understanding of the self is really looking at the combination of my relationships. So we need to think about who I make a relationship with and how I maintain that relationship. So when we talk about our relationship with these non-human entities like AI and robots, this is something that we will continue to do research on and study about.
Thank you very much. For your reference, the reason why I introduced myself is because, can I share my own experience? Well, we have used up all our time, so please be brief. Thank you. Self-understanding. In order to promote self-understanding for the past 25 years, I was actually a housewife, but I've established my own company because I found possibility within myself is to put myself in that kind of severe environment to push me down and to the edge of the cliff. then becomes a new revelation. Self-understanding is something that can be promoted because there's limits when we try to promote self-understanding when we're only engaging with the people within certain boundaries. But I think in that sense, we need to broaden that kind of angle, and in the industries, in that dire business environment, one of the most representative examples would be Elon Musk. So when we actively engage and communicate one with another, only then can the KAIST AI Philosophy Research Center can play a bigger role. So that's my thought. Thank you for sharing your invaluable experience. I think that the Kyoto Institute of Philosophy is a leading example of that, actually. And our center tries to go in that direction as well. Directly, do you want to add on as a closing? Well, today, coming here, I have learned a lot as well myself. Taking this opportunity, I've been able to engage with people who are heavily invested in humanities, especially President Kwang Hyung-lee. I've been admiring him and respecting him for a long time. So once again, I would like to express my deepest respect to President Kwang Hyung-lee once again. Well, today marks the first establishment of the KAIST AI Philosophy Research Center. I think human beings are beings that thinks about thinking. Not just simply thinking, but a being that deeply thinks about what thinking is. I think there's a role that philosophy plays in that course. So I hope human beings do not lose that kind of spirit forever. In that sense, I hope people studies philosophy for a long time, and many people studies philosophy. Because KAIST comes from STEM background, and when we merge philosophy with that kind of background, I think there's greater role that philosophy can play. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so you were not able to hear because we didn't have a lot of time. We had some talks about working with industry. So Professor Takaki, could you please share with us the potential of philosophy and working with corporations?
Thank you very much. I'll make it short. Well, one of the lessons we had is that in order to do everything we was talking about during this symposium, inter-organizational cooperation is crucial. So as a delegation of the Kyoto Institute of Philosophy, we are glad that we have another partner. Thank you very much.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. With that, I will close the panel discussion and invite President Kwang Hyung-lee for his closing remarks. Can you just briefly say some things? Well, when we first started, I asked the Research Institute to do this in a smaller room, but I think it was laudable and fortunate that we had a bigger room prepared for this large audience. So going forward, I hope this center will contribute greatly to the great civilization moving forward. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you everyone for taking part in this symposium. Despite this being quite a long journey, we have prepared lunch at the faculty club, so everyone who have applied for this, please do visit the faculty club for the lunch. And in addition, if you want to talk more and engage in dialogues with us, we can move the location to our center and engage in discussion there. So feel free to visit us. Thank you very much.